This is the BFR Podcast where we talk all things Chicago Bears every week. We're excited about today's guest. We have Theo Ash of the Stay Hot Podcast. We're going to talk Jordan Love versus Justin Fields. We'll talk the Packers offseason, of course, week one's matchup. Before we hop into the interview, man, Ficky, how you doing?
Man, I'm excited. Another week closer to the start of the NFL season against those goddamn Packers. And this time, we have the better QB. Yeah, I said it. So I'm hype as hell.
All right, well, let's hop into this interview, and then we'll check back with you guys after. All right, we're joined by Theo of the Stay Hot Podcast. Theo, man, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm sure some of your listeners are a bit terrified that I'm on here, but
that's why we got you here, though. We're excited, man. Well, like you said, you're very prominent, not just on Twitter, but TikTok, of course. I love your takes, genuinely. I know you kind of have some fun with it. But today we're going to talk just Bears-Packers, right? We're going to talk about the quarterbacks, talk about the rosters. To kind of start it off, can you just kind of break down what have the Packers gotten better? Because obviously Bears fans, we don't really pay too much attention to you guys. But like, obviously Rodgers being gone, what do you think of the roster currently? What are your expectations for next year?
I want to be optimistic, and I am relatively optimistic about Love, and we'll get into why. But man, when you look at that roster and you see Jordan Love, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, and Romeo Doubs, I look at that and I think, there's a real chance that this is a "how loyal are you" screenshot a couple years later. Like the potential is really exciting with all these rookie weapons, Musgrave and Kraft and Reed, and Love is a total unknown, and to some extent Watson and Doubs are as well. And I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited about guys like Watson and how athletic he is and how he scored so many touchdowns towards the end of last year. And I think there's plenty of reasons to be excited for Love. But man, you also look at the roster and stack it up to all the other rosters across the league, at least on offense. And I don't think that you got to temper your expectations a little bit, because there really are zero like established stars outside of maybe David Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones on that offense. And you can't bank on everyone being good, I think. Like, I would love it if everyone just took a huge jump and reached their potential next year. I don't think that'll quite happen. I think there'll be some bumps in the road. But I do think that we'll get into Love. But I think that Love will show some promise. And I think that alone, and I think Watson is legitimately very, very talented and will be a bona fide number one. The rest I'm not so sure about. But I think just based off the strength of those two things, you can expect like a somewhat decent, somewhat promising season that could contend for a wild card in the NFC. I don't think that they're more talented than a team like the Lions in this division. I don't expect them to win it. I expect them to be in the hunt and maybe in the wild card race.
Okay.
But it wouldn't surprise me if it was a disaster. It really would not surprise me if it was a disaster.
Now you say disaster. Are you talking like Bears?
I'm talking like everyone sucks, man. I'm talking like they come into it and it's like Love is not the guy and everyone, like, there's just no one to lean on.
Yeah.
There's
it's
no
Caleb Williams
to lean on. It's Caleb Williams time. It's like the offensive line, like Bakhtiari gets hurt again and the line, isn't great, and the receiving core isn't great, and the offense just kind of sputters, and the defense is about the same as it was last year, which wasn't very good. So like, I think there's a potential for this to go really poorly because it's just a bunch of young, unproven talent. But there are some things that I like. So I'm hoping that my expectations are more, I don't think it'll be worst case scenario, but worst case scenario is definitely worse with the Packers than a team like, the Cowboys, they're not.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, kind of going to the draft class of the Packers, what are your thoughts on those first two picks? Vaness, of course, I think I like that pick. And then obviously kind of one that was interesting was the tight end Luke. What are your thoughts on those two? Are you excited about those? Were you kind of wanting them to go maybe somewhere else? What are your thoughts on those two?
I wanted him to go somewhere else. I love Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think if you want a reliable option in the slot, which is where I think Luke Musgrave will kind of line up, I don't think of him as so much of a blocker. I think of him as someone with great acceleration, someone who can really create separation on those long crossers and run away from people. So I kind of think of him as a big slot. And if you're going to have that, I'd rather it be someone like Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I don't know. It was an all right pick. He was hurt all of last year. I wasn't super familiar with his game. I've kind of talked myself into it to some extent, but rookie tight ends don't do too much year one. Like traditionally, it's not like tight ends take a while to be good. So I'm not expecting too much from Musgrave year one. And I'm not honestly expecting too much from Van Ness year one either. I don't think that these guys are going to be instant impact dudes. I don't think Van Ness has the moves right now. My scouting report on him and most people's scouting report on him was it's all power all the time with him. And what can he build off of that? If these linemen in the NFL know you're going to try to go through their chest, they can prep for that. They can drop their anchor and you're not going anywhere. But it reminds me a lot of the Rashawn Gary selection from a couple of years ago. He wasn't very productive at Michigan. He was someone with inside out versatility. He's someone who could push the pocket, crush the pocket. But he was not someone who was a sack master right away. Now, as the years have gone on, I think he's developed into a top tier defensive lineman. I think that he was on pace for a monster season last season before he tore his ACL. And I'm hoping he can get back to that borderline defensive player of the year type of conversation that he was in before he got hurt. And I think some people might laugh at that because it's Rashawn Gary and he's not really talked about in that way. But like, man, he was really good. He was he was leading the league in pressure rate. Yeah, his speed to power was really, really tough to deal with. And I think that's kind of, if I didn't love the Gary pick when it happened a couple of years ago because of the production thing and because of the lack of moves and the lack of polish, but man, they turned him into kind of a beast. And I'm willing to let him, hear him out if they want Van Ness to kind of go through that same thing because, they call Van Ness Hercules for a reason. He is someone who has crazy bull rush ability. He ran through Paris Johnson. He ran through Peter Skoronski. There were some really high level reps against some really high level tackles. Like he can do it in the league. He just needs more answers. And if they can develop that, and they've had a history of developing that with Gary, I'm hopeful for it in year 2, year 3, year 4. But when a guy like Christian Gonzalez was on the board, who I absolutely loved, or a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba was on the board, who I absolutely loved, I was hoping that would be the pick. But the Packers never quite pick who I want. But
a wide receiver it's all right. In the first round, that's not happening. So
yeah, no, it's not.
I was hoping that you guys were not going to land JSN, but you did get Jaden Reed. What are are you excited about him?
Yeah, I'm excited about him. I think that he's someone who had a great Senior Bowl. Yeah, he's dynamic. He was a great Senior Bowl. Someone who's fast. He could track the ball over his shoulder. Someone who plays much bigger than he is. He's got some dog in him. And I think, you've got so many young weapons now. Like some of them are bound to hit. And if all it takes is one of Musgrave, of Kraft, or Reed, and you're in pretty good shape. Because I think Dobbs and Watson looked pretty promising last year. So whoever that third head in the trio is, it doesn't really matter to me. I think they took 3 good selections. I liked Kraft as well. I liked what he offered. I almost liked him more than Musgrave, what he offered after the catch. I thought he may have even had more reliable hands. Definitely was a more physical player and offered more after the catch, like I just said, and has the body type as an inline blocker. So I was very excited about the Kraft pick. And I know they thought about it was between Kraft and Musgrave when they picked in the second round. I know they thought they really liked Kraft. They ended up going with Musgrave. He was kind of the consensus guy there. But rounds later, when Kraft was still there, they were like, man, might as well get them both. So I don't know. Kraft kind of fell to them. I don't think that both of them we'll see what their plan is to utilize both. But I think of all the weapons they took, I think one of them will work out. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see which one that might be. And maybe it'll be all 3, hopefully. But I don't think that we can really hope for that.
I don't know. With Packers luck, it might be the case. I mean,
I'm very curious. But one player I really like over there is Watson. I'll be honest. I wanted him as a Bears fan last year. Vicky, did you?
Yeah. Well, I wanted there was 5 wide receivers we wanted. Yeah. We wanted anything. So yeah, he was.
I really wanted Watson.
Yeah. No, but Watson was the only issue with Watson was his drops, right? Wasn't that kind of his one?
Yeah, he wasn't a great route runner. I thought he was someone who took a couple too many steps, going in and out of breaks. He's someone who couldn't track the ball super well. The drops are part of that, but just not quite seeing it over his shoulder and not quite being in the right place. He reminded me a little bit of Marquez Valdes-Scantling, kind of a 1-for-1 replacement for him. And when they made the pick, I was like, whatever. But I think you need a deep threat like that. Obviously, there's a big gaping hole left by MVS. They love to take those shots, and Alan Lazard isn't really going to be the one to take the top off the defense. So I was excited they took someone that could do that. But man, I mean, he looked more explosive than MVS ever did towards the end of the year. I mean, his burst on some of those end arounds, and against the Eagles, he took that crossing route to the house and was burning angles. And he's someone that I don't think he's someone with rare speed. And I just think one-on-one with him, he's going to create separation down the field. I think it'd be suicide to press him and have him run a go route with no safety help. So yeah, I think he could be really, really dangerous with how prolific he was towards the end of the year. He was better than I thought he would be in year one. And it took him a while, and all those problems that I was concerned with him popped up early, but he was also hurt a lot. And once he started to get some confidence and started to string healthy weeks together, man, the sky's the limit with him. He looks, I mean,
that 3 or 4 game stretch where it was like two touchdowns. I was like, touchdowns. Can we chill? Like,
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, damn, like I'm a Packers fan, and I didn't expect that.
I mean, he's got all the physical attributes. Like, he's tall, fast, strong. So, like you said, if you can work on those coachable things like route running, you know what I mean, tracking the ball, like, it just took him a little bit. What was it, like week 10-ish? Where he started kind of breaking out a little bit.
That Cowboys game was the coming out party. They played one-on-one. Dan Quinn played a lot of man coverage, and just no one could hang with him, and he scored 3 touchdowns. I don't know exactly what week that was, but that was the beginning of it. And then he just kept scoring, and they weren't easy touchdowns. There were some amazing catches. Like, I was at the Titans game where I think there was a free play that Rodgers extended and just threw it up to Watson, and he came down with it, contested in the end zone. And there may have been 2 contested catch touchdowns in that game, if I'm remembering it correctly. Just mossing guys down the field. Is like, and he was so unreliable to begin with, like big drops and not tracking things well. Obviously, that first target of the season was a drop touchdown, and that seemed to kind of rattle his confidence a bit, and just a complete renaissance halfway through the year. So we'll see if that continues to grow and grow, because if not, I mean, he could be a really special wide receiver. He could be top 10 pretty easily, because there aren't 10 wide receivers who are more athletic. That's for sure.
Yeah. So he's 24, I believe, right? 24?
Yeah.
Something like that. He's young. But my question for you, Theo, who are you taking right now? Obviously, I think DJ Moore is 26, but would you rather have DJ Moore or Christian Watson? Obviously, kind of different careers right now. You know, he's kind of a vet. Watson is still kind of banking on that potential, but who would you rather have right now on your roster?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I'd rather have, I think I'd rather have Watson, just because the rookie deal thing, like, you're getting him for cheap for a couple years, and he just showed so much potential that, like, you know, if I have 20 million to spend somewhere else, you feel okay with Watson. But obviously, I think as players, DJ Moore is pretty easily the more well-rounded, like, clear of Watson guy right now. I think you should be happy with, I think you should be happy either way. I mean, I guess in terms of trade value, Moore probably has more. I don't know if Watson quite would have demanded quite the price that DJ Moore did.
Well, here's a question for you too, Theo. Does the league view Watson, like, his success, is that tied to Rodgers, right? Now that Rodgers is gone, it's like, okay, Watson, now we really have to see how you play.
I think so. I think he's got everything to prove, unlike DJ Moore, who's been amazing with horrible quarterbacks for his whole career. Like, he doesn't have much to prove as a number 1 elite guy. I think Watson has everything to prove. He hasn't put together a good full season yet. Like, he put together a good stretch of games and scored 9 touchdowns at the end of the year. And that's incredible. And you're really hopeful. But, like, I think that GMs are definitely looking at how he will perform without Rodgers, and just perform even if Rodgers was coming back. Like, can you actually string these things together? Like, or was this just a, kind of fluky touchdown luck? Like, touchdowns can kind of come and go.
Dave reminds me of like an Anthony Miller type, right?
Yeah.
He's in the league, rookie year, 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Look promising, and then you're just like, I think Christian. First of all, let me say that I think Christian Watson is going to be much better than Anthony Miller, but
I hope so.
But you do have to see kind of that consistency, right? Kind of spill over.
I think he has everything to prove.
Yeah. With Watson and Miller had a couple touchdowns where it was kind of easy, but with Watson, there's that burst that, Miller didn't never had. And then also I think Watson's just the spectacular is just, it's crazy with him. But kind of speaking of Aaron Rodgers, he's obviously in New York now. What are your thoughts on him, leaving the way he did? Are you kind of excited it's over? Do you wish he would have kind of retired, in Green Bay? What are your thoughts?
I'm fine with it. I'm happy it ended happy. Like he had a really gracious post on Instagram thanking all the players and the fans and said, the relationship's good. We'll meet again. He'll be in the Packers Ring of Honor. I don't think he'll get booed when he comes back to Green Bay. If he comes back to Green Bay, I know that game isn't happening next season. And so unless they beat in the Super Bowl, which I don't necessarily think is likely, like we'll see if the Packers reunion in Green Bay ever happens, but I think that he'd be very warmly welcomed. I, for one, would definitely clap and cheer for everything that he did for the team over these past couple of years. But also, they drafted Love and they were able to get a good amount for Rodgers. They were able to get that second round pick. They were able to get
are you satisfied
very
with that?
easily. Yeah, I think so. I think if you would have asked me at the end of the year if he was on a good or a bad contract, I would have said bad. Yeah. And they got a first round pick and a second round pick and a pick swap in the first round for him on a bad contract, I thought. And so I was honestly pretty impressed they got what they did for him. So I was very happy with it. But I think he's going to be better on the Jets next year. I love Garrett Wilson. I absolutely love Garrett Wilson. People talk shit about, I don't know if I could say that on here. But,
you can say all of them if you need to.
About Nathaniel Hackett. But, I mean, he got a head coaching job in the league working with Rodgers. Like, I think that's something he's very comfortable with. I think you need Rodgers to be comfortable because if he's uncomfortable, he can kind of go rogue a little bit sometimes and get frustrated, and that's never fun. But I think with Hackett, he's going to be happy. I think that the Jets are kind of yes men for him. They signed Randall Cobb. They signed Alan Lazard. They signed. So it's like, I think that he's going to go in. He's going to be a little pissed off because the Packers traded him. He's around people he's comfortable with. He was hurt last year. His thumb was all kind of messed up. And he could get hurt again. Like he's already kind of tweaked some things and is sitting out some of these mini camps. But he's at the mini camps. He's at the mini camps, which has not been super reliable for Rodgers over these last couple of years in Green Bay. Like he didn't build that chemistry. So it's definitely bittersweet. I think that there's a very high % chance that he outplays Jordan Love next year with in that offense with Watson and whatnot, or Wilson and whatnot. But I also think we got a good haul for him. And I think when you have Love on the bench, I don't blame him for moving on. And if you can draft Love, inspire 2 MVPs out of Rodgers out of spite, and then trade him for first round picks after the first down year, and then give the reins over to Love. I mean,
I was excited when I was hearing. Oh, go ahead.
It's a lot like the Favre and Rodgers transition, and that worked out fantastic. Yeah. So it's like, I don't blame him for trying that again. I don't think it's going to be, obviously Love is not going to be like a top 5 quarterback of all time or anything like that. Like
not.
That should never,
God,
that should never be the expectation.
We can't take 3 back to back to back.
But can he be a franchise quarterback? I think yes. And I think that he had time to sit, and I think that's a good thing. Obviously, the more you prep for a job, the more the better you're going to be when you step into that job. I think that even though we haven't seen much of him through his limited sample sizes and through his, preseason performances and through what the team is saying, I think that you can detect that growth. So I think it was about time, and I'm not too choked up about it. But of course, I'll always be grateful for what all the success that I've been able to watch with Rodgers as the quarterback of my favorite team. And he's a legend. He's a legend.
I'm glad he's gone. But as far as the Ring of
Honor,
you
guys are.
yes, please.
As far as the Ring of Honor, like as far as cheering Aaron Rodgers when he comes back, we still cheer on Jay Cutler. So you guys should absolutely I think we give him standing ovations whenever he's in the stadium, we do. Honestly. But it's kind of speaking of kind of Jordan Love, for me, I don't really talk about him too often just because I don't know what he is, because I don't want it to backfire, right? So, but the funny thing with Justin Fields, because Fields has a lot to prove this year. Obviously, a little bit different circumstances, but so does Jordan Love. You're going to know if he's good. You're going to know if Fields is good this year. So with Jordan Love, kind of what is he? What do you expect? Just like maybe his ceiling, and what is his floor?
I expect a pocket passer. I expect someone who is way more polished than people think right away. He's someone who does not hold the football. He's not a Zach Wilson or, for better or worse, to Justin Fields, who's someone who wants to extend plays and run. He's someone who wants to hit the top of his drop and get the ball out. And in the Chiefs, he's had 2 kind of big starting moments. And one was the Chiefs game when Rodgers lied about COVID and he had to step in and start without much practice. And the Chiefs blitzed him. They absolutely heated him up. And they were leaving Devontae Adams one-on-one. And what he was doing was he was getting to the top of his drop and he was throwing it to Adams. And the throws were under pressure. He was, the line I don't think was doing a great job of picking up blitzes. And that could very well be on Love setting the protections. That's the quarterback's job. And these throws to Adams were deep down the field. And there were some picks and there were some inaccurate balls. But it was a very high degree of difficulty. But what made me excited about that Chiefs game is it wasn't a Zach Wilson. It wasn't like, oh my God, like run backwards, force the ball into like I have no idea what he's doing. Like that's what I feel like when I'm watching some of these really terrible busts is I just don't know what their process is. Like there was a guy open and he just tried to create something out of structure. Love was trying to win within the structure, but he just couldn't quite do it in that moment without that practice against that team in Arrowhead. And he played a bad game. Like, don't get me wrong, but at least I kind of understood what he was trying to do. And that was, if they're going to leave Adams one-on-one, I'm going to throw it to Adams, which is like not a bad strategy. Then you get to the Eagles game when Rodgers left with a thumb injury and he was hitting the top of his drop, getting the ball out and attacking intermediate windows. He was throwing with anticipation. He was, being aggressive, but not reckless. And it was really, really promising. Like he legitimately stepped in and played fantastic. Darius Slay afterwards came out and said he looked like Aaron Rodgers out there. So he's someone that I think that there's going to be a lot more on his plate than people think from a processing standpoint. And I think that he's going to be able to rise to the challenge. I think that a lot of people think of him as because he was a project. He was an athletic, big armed. I think people might be expecting a Josh Allen. They might be expecting like a obviously not as good as Josh Allen or like a Mahomes archetype where they're creating out of structure and they're throwing with arm angles and they're, doing all these crazy athletic things. I don't think that's what we're going to see from Jordan Love. I think that they're going to get an empty a lot. That's what they did when he came in versus the Eagles. It was 5 wide and let him play point guard. Let him get the ball out quickly. Give him a lot of options and let him read things out pre-snap and throw the ball with anticipation. And he showed that he could do that at a tiny, tiny, tiny sample size. And he also has the athleticism for when things break down, he can still make things happen. And I think that's his backup plan, not his first plan. So, I mean, best case scenario, he's one of the better players in the league, I think, honestly. Like he's got that kind of arm. He's got that kind of size. Yeah. He's got that kind of running ability. And he's got that want to stand in the pocket and slice teams up from there. And eventually that's what you kind of need to do is like get an 11 personnel and throw it down the field. Like that's the most efficient way to win a football game. I think that he can do that from the pocket with the athleticism to create. So it's all there for him. But I think like his footwork, his mechanics maybe still need a little bit of work. Accuracy still needs a little bit of work, I think. And I think worst case scenario, he comes in and, they put a lot on his plate with all the empty stuff and he just can't quite keep it going through a large sample size. And there's picks and there's, bad throws and there's inaccuracy. And there was a play in the preseason where he extended a play and threw it into like quintuple coverage and it got picked. And, I think worst case scenario is he just can't play like that. And he's just not polished enough to play like that over a 17 game stretch. And the Eagles thing was kind of fluky. I mean, I think best case scenario, you're dealing with an all pro type of quarterback and it's anything could happen. Anything could happen. The floor is really low. The ceiling is really high. And a lot of it'll come down to the wide receivers and the help around them. And that's, like I said, that's a complete unknown as well. So like this season, I have no idea. It could be.
I heard someone say, because I think it was a Bears fan, just like, hey, what do you want Jordan Love to be? And someone was like, I want him trash. And then another person was like, hey, I want him to kind of be like Trubisky, string them along, where they can't can't get Caleb Williams, and they're stuck in that like mediocrity
middle ground
for like 2 years. Yeah.
That is the worst. Where they show enough promise where you're like, oh, like you have that, maybe Love has like a 4 touchdown game and you're like, wow, this is him. But then the next week it's like a 2-pick, 3-pick it. And then that's where you're like, you just don't have the consistency. And so it's tough, but we haven't seen enough.
I mean, they already extended it. They already extended him. So like, it's kind of already that reality, no matter if he's good or not.
Was it 2 more years?
They got one more. So like 20, he has 2 more years on the team, but they extended him 1. Isn't that right, Theo? Is that right?
I think.
Yeah, to like 2025, I think. So basically, they just extended him a year earlier than they need to, and they gave him an extra year on the back end. So
that was like
2
a
more years.
Friday news dump. Like I was kind of, I'm going in my weekend, you know.
Yeah.
So with Jordan Love, well, last thing on him, are you? Because one thing I hear a lot is, you know, he sat behind Rodgers. Why couldn't he push him? You know, obviously, Rodgers is a Hall of Fame quarterback, so that's a big part. But are you concerned at all that he had to continue to sit, that he could not even compete? Or
Rodgers
do you
won
think this
2
is
MVPs.
part of the plan?
No, he won 2 MVPs, right? Like to expect him to come in and out, like, I mean, what would he have to play? He'd have to be the best quarterback in the league, you know. And after the 2 MVPs, obviously, like, and outplaying Rodgers last year is not a tall task, you know, but
It still had a good year though. Yeah, and it's still Aaron Rodgers.
It's Aaron Rodgers, man. Like, what are you gonna do? Like,
good luck.
I wonder. So why do you think
history?
So you think this was all maybe part of the plan, that they were gonna, hey, we have a couple years left with Rodgers, let's let him sit, and you know, push comes to shove, maybe he starts earlier, but if not, maybe just, you know, a couple years just to really. Do you think that benefits Love at all? Like as far as, or do you think it's kind of, interesting?
I think that's the Packer way. I think that's what they did. You know, everyone gets promoted in house. Brian Gutekunst was not, you know, Ryan. It's not like Ryan Poles, who came from Kansas City. He was promoted from within the organization, and Ted Thompson learned under Ron Wolf, and so on and so on. I think the Packers have a very specific way they do things, and I think they have precedent. And I think they were like, hey, you know, Rodgers sat for years behind a great player, and then when that great player started falling off, we moved on and went to the rookie who now has learned behind this great player, and that gave him a better chance to succeed than throwing him to the wolves right away. And I think that was always the plan. I think when they took Love, they were prepared for this wait, and that wait happened, and they got better play out of, like, Rodgers before 2020 was not as good as I think people maybe remember, because he immediately won 2 MVPs after the Love selection. But man, there were some really down performances and some really kind of mediocre years from Rodgers and the Packers offense those last few years with McCarthy. And it really did look like he might not be an elite quarterback anymore. So I get why they took Love in those moments. Maybe they would have liked to start him a little bit before this, and they wouldn't have had to give him the extension before seeing him play basically at all. But
yeah, that's my question for you.
I think they were prepared to wait.
Yeah, would you have rather had, knowing that the Rodgers success and the MVPs didn't really lead to, like, well, I know championships is the end goal, but it wasn't like, as the regular season was way more successful than obviously the postseason, right? Knowing that in back-to-back years, right, and then even how last year ended up, would you have rather had Love, like, have Rodgers have, like, you know, see that descending of like an older quarterback, and then have Love actually like maybe sit 1 year, and then you actually have more data to look at after, you know, he's started season 2 and season 3. So you're in a better position to kind of understand the landscape of how the team needs to move when it comes to that important quarterback position.
Run that by me one more time.
Would you rather? So so basically why Love sat, right, is because Rodgers ended up skill-wise ascending, right? He won back-to-back MVPs, right? So let's just imagine, like, inversely. Would you have rather had Rodgers, like, kind of be like, okay, we need to get rid of you sooner, and then have Jordan Love start, like, the second season or the third season, so then you have more data on the quarterback. So then when you're looking at it present day, you have a better understanding of, like, we know what Love is. Now we know how we need to navigate. Maybe we need to move on. Maybe he is the franchise quarterback. But you would obviously not have the regular season success.
Yeah, I think when you look at it now, obviously, it would have been nice to know what Love is, like the song title. It would have been nice now because we didn't get any Super Bowls from those Rodgers MVP years. So, like, maybe it would have been better to just have, like, you know, have a better sample size on Love and have a more clear indication of, like, what the future is going to look like. But at the end of the day, MVP quarterback play is MVP quarterback play, and Love wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, we don't know about
those first 2 years.
Well,
yeah.
The funny thing is, I think,
I don't want to complain about that. I think, you know, what happened, and I don't think I'd change it. You know, I watched a lot of really good football those years and watched a lot of wins. And even though they didn't end in Super Bowls, you know, only one team can win the Super Bowl every year. And I'd rather, I'd rather watch a really good team than a mid team or a mediocre team. And, still,
you don't have to throw it in our face.
Yeah.
Theo.
I thought you said Bears team.
Yeah. Well,
you don't have to throw it in our face. It's okay.
Yeah. I still had fun watching those years and they happened the way they did. And I don't think I'd go back and say like, oh, I wish Rodgers fell off sooner so he could get a better look at Love. I wouldn't trade in, even though they didn't end in the end goal. It was still a fun ride.
Right.
So
yeah.
One
thing.
If Love is good, we'll see it now. Like it all came to a head eventually. Like if Love is good, we will eventually know. It's not like Love walked and we'll never ever know what we had in him. Like right now is the moment. We would have known 2 years ago. We would have known last year, and now we're gonna know now. And that's okay.
I think it's almost perfect timing because you're gonna know if Jordan Love is good. What you need to do next year, and then you could have 2 firsts next season, right?
Right.
And Caleb Williams is here. So, I mean, even if Love isn't, you have the ammo to kind of go get, maybe if it is Caleb Williams, go get him. So I think it's a very interesting time for the Packers, which I hope, like I said, Love is good enough that they don't have to maybe draft a quarterback. But the thing with Jordan Love, so we'll kind of go over to Justin Fields now. I know this is probably what you want to talk about, and I see you tweet some clips, you kind of talk them a little bit. But what is your absolute kind of take bias aside? What do you think of Justin Fields? Like, what do you expect? And then obviously, what are some things you obviously think he could work on? And then what's his ceiling? What are you afraid of him as a Packers fan, or
yes,
is it more Trubisky?
I am. I am afraid of Justin Fields. Really? Here's my honest to God take on Justin Fields. Justin Fields, he needs to get better as a passer. Point blank period. Like he needs to operate in the structure. He needs to trust like what he is seeing. Like they were the worst passing team in the league last year. Like point blank period. And I get the receiving core sucked. They were the cheapest roster in the league. The line was not that good. Like this is all true. This fact check true. But at the same time, there were times guys were open and Justin Fields would hold on the ball and not throw it or whatever. But he kind of went rogue. That's kind of the way I would describe Fields. It was like rogue Fields these past couple years. My take on Fields is like he wasn't having a lot of fun earlier in his career. I think Nagy was kind of an asshole. There wasn't much talent. It's very cold in Chicago. I don't know if that was exactly the location he wanted to end up in. I don't know. Like that's
pretty to play indoors.
Speculation.
So. He wants to play indoors,
right?
So
he said he's faster indoors too. So
yeah. So like I don't know if it was quite the location or the roster or the coach he wanted to play for, and it was going pretty poorly. And I think at some point to save his career, he said, "This is all going to be me. Like I'm gonna be the guy to make things happen, and it's not going to be the receivers, and it's not going to be the coaches, it's not going to be the play call. I'm going to 1v11 the defense." And I think that's kind of the mindset he got into this year. And the scary thing is like that kind of worked some games.
Way too much.
Like they'd call a screen and he either wouldn't throw it or something, like it would get covered or it would be open and he just wouldn't throw it. And he'd just be like, I'm just gonna scramble, and he'd like run through the whole defense and he would score. And it's like, man, that's not supposed to happen, right? Like
no.
A quarterback isn't supposed to take matters into his own hands and have it work like that. So I think, with more time, you get that kind of athletic upside and you get that kind of game breaking ability. And if you think that he can improve over time at like the in structure stuff, I mean, you're dealing with a Josh Allen level rise, someone who can truly just with his athleticism, make things happen that no one else can. And I think when you look at what sparked Josh Allen's growth was the addition of Stephon Diggs. What sparked Jalen Hurts' growth was the addition of A.J. Brown. What sparked Tua Tagovailoa's growth from a bad quarterback to a good one last year was the addition of Tyreek Hill. I think the addition of DJ Moore can't really be overstated. I think another year in an offense that has kind of shown him some success. Like they were scoring some points at the end of this year. Like they were the number one rushing offense, and towards the end of the season, they were putting up points. And,
they had 4 games
performances.
4 games like 30. Yeah.
So now I think maybe he can finally feel like a little bit of trust and a little bit of, they get a full off season to work in an offense that has like shown him actual results, which, Nagy never really did. No. Like, I think it could be very, very scary. And maybe it never like he's been in the league a while now. And, it was still the worst passing offense last year. So he could make a big jump as a passer and it could still be just okay. And so it has to be a big jump. But man, he was like that at Ohio State. It was I've never seen such a transformation from college to pros. I mean, he plays completely differently. This is rogue Fields. This is completely different. And I think if there is a possibility that you get a balance of both, you get some of that systemy, accurate in structure stuff that made him such a first round prospect at Ohio State. And then you combine this kind of game-breaking rogueness that he has showed these past couple of years in Chicago. And if he can kind of become that idealized version of himself when the roster is not literally the worst offensive roster in the league, I think it could be really, really good. And I think I'd probably rather have Fields than Love, to be completely honest, even as a Packers fan. So I'm scared of Fields. I don't think that his potential, I don't sleep on it, So it's easy to laugh it off. But
I think you kind of touched on it with Fields in college, which when we were kind of looking at those quarterbacks that year, we didn't think we had a chance at Fields, but I knew he was athletic. But when it comes to, I think the issue with Fields, we lost Vicky, we'll be right back. But with Fields, I think he hasn't had these weapons since Ohio State. And obviously it's a little different because that was a crazy wide receiving group. But you have Darnell Mooney, DJ Moore, Chase Claypool, obviously has a lot to prove. And then obviously your guy, Tunyon. What are your thoughts on Tunyon? Obviously I think he was a pretty good player in Green Bay, but kind of give us your breakdown. Yeah, just solid tight end.
Yeah, he's someone who could do a bit of everything, some depth. I think Kmet is better, and you should expect definitely more from Kmet than Tunyon. But, Tunyon had some reliable moment. Rodgers really trusted him for whatever reason. So I think when it comes to, and maybe that was just a thing with Rodgers that he won't get with Fields. Rodgers kind of had his favorites, but for whatever reason, Tunyon was one of those guys that was always in the right spot for Rodgers. He was someone with pretty reliable hands, and he was someone that he went to and someone that he trusted. So I think that if he can get that relationship with Fields, he can be a solid number 2. But I wouldn't worry. I don't think Tunyon is going to be some game-breaking player. No. I think
I like to have depth, though.
Yeah,
definitely. And then we do appreciate, first of all, just being honest, and because a lot of people, I think a lot of fans, especially on Twitter, I think you like to rile them up, which is I kind of like it too. It's fun to watch. I just go in the comments, I'm just like, man, I don't have time to do argue and everything. But like I said, as far as just being honest, we do appreciate it. And then Justin Fields, obviously, there's a lot. We don't know exactly what's going to transpire this year with Jordan Love or Fields, but who do you think the best? Could you go ahead and just rank kind of right now? You can add in a potential as well. But what does the NFC North look like? Who are the top quarterbacks, and who do you expect to win the division, or at least compete?
I think right now, the best quarterbacks is a very boring Cousins, Goff, Fields, Love. In terms of who I'd rather have going forward, it's probably Fields, Love, Cousins, Goff. It might be almost exactly the opposite.
That's funny
because Cousins is proven. You could talk about Cousins all you want, but the reality of the situation is he's been a very competent quarterback who's led some pretty good passing offenses over these past couple of years. He's someone who's got a big arm. He's someone who's accurate. He's someone who kind of eliminated bad sacks from his game last year. Someone who can do what he needs to do, really. And someone who's had a lot of clutch comebacks over the years. It always seems like the Vikings are in close games towards the end. And last year they won every single one of them when they were in close games
crazy.
Towards the end, So it's he's someone who got it done in those moments, and someone who has never been an elite quarterback, not someone I trust out of structure and to be a game breaker like potentially Fields or Love. But right now, I think that he's proven the most and it deserves to be considered the best quarterback in the division over someone like Fields because, like I said, I'm excited about Fields and I think that he's got limitless potential. But again, worst passing offense in the league. I don't think you can rank him above Cousins or even Goff. And I don't think you can rank Love above those guys either. I don't think you can rank Love above Fields because what is Love? We'd have no idea. But in terms of potential, I am high on Fields and Love. And I think is Cousins that guy to win you a Super Bowl? Is Goff that guy to win the Super Bowl? To me, it's no. And with Fields and Love, the answer is Maybe. So I'd rather have the maybe than the no. But like right now, I think, those are two different questions. It's like, who would you rather have going forward and who should be considered the best and the most proven right now, which is kind of cool.
I would even take Goff over Cousins only if we're looking at the lens of like, get me to the Super Bowl, because we know Kirk
Goff
Cousins
has been there, I guess.
Right. You're right. And we know we know that the Vikings quarterback, I can't think of his name. I'm sorry. I keep thinking Kirko Chains because that's his nickname. Cousins, sorry. Cousins. I always call him Kirko Chains. That's just funny. But Cousins, we know he's not going to get you there because those are primetime games. We've seen, I think he has like one of the worst primetime records in like NFL history for a starting quarterback. So it's like regular season, he balls out. But like when the lights really shine, he does not show up. So I would actually take Goff because at least Goff had a good year and we've seen Goff take a team to a Super Bowl before. So. But yeah,
I think both are kind of in the same vein and the same tier. Like, I'm not going to argue like Cousins or Goff. I slightly prefer Cousins, but Goff is kind of that same deal where with Ben Johnson and with that offense, like he can be very efficient, but if he was asked to carry a bad team, like if you put him in Fields' situation, would he be anywhere close to what he is? Like, absolutely not. So, and if you put Fields in his situation, I think Fields would be the better quarterback. So, I don't know. It's kind of it's tough to say because two of them are just so unproven and two of them are like proven mid, I think, or like proven above,
heavy
like
on the mid,
above average. Mid, and I don't mean mid as it, and I don't even mean mid isn't bad. I mean like mid is in like truly like middle of the pack. Like
they're not top 10 where it's like I'll take you there, but they're not bottom 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like you
said,
they're
good. They do deserve some credit for like being pretty good quarterbacks, but like I just don't think. I think to be an elite quarterbacks, you need things to go wrong and you still create. I think you need some of that to you, and I just don't think Cousins and Goff have that.
Proven mid. That's funny.
I love that.
That's funny.
Might get a shirt for that. Proven mid. That's hilarious.
Awesome. Well, Theo, man, we appreciate you hopping on. I guess we'll leave with this. We got week 1, Packers, Bears in Chicago. Long time away, but who are you taking?
It's so tough. The thing is, I think the Bears offense will be better than the Packers offense, but I think the Packers defense will be better than Bears defense. I still don't trust that Bears front four.
What front four?
Yeah, exactly. That's a pretty big part of a football team that they don't really have. And the secondary too, I like Brisker a lot. I think they have one of the better safety. Yeah. I love their safety duo. Edmonds is he's going to be a good linebacker in that system, spot drop and clog passing lanes with his long arms and whatnot. But man, it's like, if they don't get any pressure, like I think the Packers will be able to get pressure, and I just don't know if the Bears will be able to. So this will be, I'll say Packers week 1. Yeah. I'll say Packers week 1, but
who knows?
I don't know. I have no idea. I think that they're two of the most exciting, like unknown young teams in the league.
Yeah. I think it's a great way to start the season.
Oh, they did that on purpose. Really Of course, this. That's why I think this game was. Well, I bought tickets. This is why I personally know, but it was like number 4 or 5 highest cost for the tickets out of the whole season, right?
It could be we talk about mid. This could be a historic mid off, like Fields versus Love. It could be like we could go in with all these expectations and then find out, both aren't as game breaking as we thought. But it also could be the beginning of a brand new rivalry that looks pretty promising. I prefer to think that'll be the reality, and I think Love has the defense to complement the offense, and Fields doesn't quite have that yet. So I'll go Packers.
That's cool. Awesome. That's cool. Well, is there a Packers game that you've already kind of got circled in, or maybe one that you're going to be going out to for the start of the season, or not even but just for the new season? I'm
going to be in Denver. I'm moving to Denver, and they play the Broncos in Denver. So I'm going to that game at Mile High, so one way or another. That's the one that I have circled, and I am a big Justin Herbert fan, so I've got the Chargers game circled. That's like my little darling team, just even though I'm a Packers fan. So
they are fun to root on.
They are fun to root for.
I don't know why, but they're fun to root. Just like they don't seem like they do anything wrong.
They just are like that contender in that division other than the Chiefs, and it would be kind of fun to see them knock off the Chiefs. And I think I would love a MVP Herbert season because I think that he gets a lot of unnecessary crap for problems that are not all his fault. So and that's one of the better teams they'll play all season.
Well,
so
Ficky and I said with the Chargers, they just lose weird games recently. That's what we like. You never really know what to expect sometimes.
And for like 3 seasons, it's been the case. And they get way too many injuries. Their stars always get injured, and it's especially on offense.
Bosa and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Rashawn Slater and J.C. Jackson last year. Like, I don't know, man. And then they still made the playoffs, and I was like, that's pretty good. So I've got that game circled, and I don't know what other ones. The Chargers game.
I guess maybe week 18 against us again, because I mean that may be important. Like if we're talking about in the hunt, right? It could be.
Yeah. And then I guess the Panthers game with Bryce Young, and I would also the Chiefs game, just because Love played against the Chiefs in that first start. It didn't go super well. I think that would be a really good benchmark for success. Is like, let's play Spagnuolo again. Let's play those Chiefs again, and like we can really see from that first start to the same team later, what that looks like. And at that point, it's pretty late in the season. So at that point, we'll probably kind of know what they've got in Love, but it's the Chiefs too. Like anytime you play the Chiefs, it's kind of a big game. So those are probably the ones that stand out the most to me. But really the Bears game week 1 is probably like the event of the Packers schedule, that Love versus Fields. There's all this talk between the two fan bases all off season on if Fields sucks or if Love sucks or whatever. And then we'll actually get to see week 1, so I think that's got to be the main event right off the bat.
Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, Theo, man, we appreciate you hopping on. You just want to plug your socials. I know you have the Stay Hot podcast. We love it. But just where can we find you, man?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and TikTok at Theo Ash NFL. And I've got a podcast with my 2 co-hosts, Blade and Matt, called the Stay Hot Podcast on Blue Wire. So yeah, follow me on all those places or don't. Awesome. I don't care.
No, do it. Y'all need to do it. If y'all follow us, you need to follow him. They got good stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, thank you so much.
And if I antagonize the Bears, know that it is just all part of the rivalry, and that's what.
I mean, to be fair, you have the right to do it. Like, we have not been competitive at all, so like I can't be mad at you for doing that, because if I was in your seat, I would be doing the same thing. So
what's funny? Like, real quick, I don't know if you've seen it. Like yesterday, like I really try not to argue Fields' love or just argue Fields in general, because we don't really know. Obviously, I'm excited about it. I think we all are. But yesterday, I think there was one with like they were comparing Jordan Love on a boat, which is great. He's enjoying himself. And then they're like shirtless Fields saying he's working out right now. I'm like, Fields like took a vacation early in the year. Yeah, he was on a boat like 2 weeks ago. Like
it's so reaching. It's so I'm like, they can do both.
The boat trip. The dialogue around the boat trip was so funny. Wow. Like, they're on vacation. It's like, dog, they're in Door County. That is like 20 minutes away from Green Bay. They could be at practice and then leave and get on a boat in Door County if they really wanted to.
It's like these people have lives outside of football. Like you can go to the gym and then like do fun shit.
But like,
but that's it's what makes football fun, though. I love that Bears fans talk shit about the Packers just being on a boat, and the Packers fans, I'm sure, will talk shit about,
of course,
whatever the hell.
Well, Justin Fields is running back. That's what I get all the time.
Yeah,
that's good for running back. The cliche
for running back. They're not wrong with that. So.
Yeah, and then they compare like physiques, which I'm like Aaron Rodgers, all the great Tom Brady's good physique. Like, it doesn't matter if you're like super muscular to play this position. Like it's great that he's an athlete, but it has nothing to do with, how he's going to perform. But
it's basically that's the off season in general. We just need drama, soap operas. You need something to just stir up conversation. So we're here for it. Oh, Theo, you're on mute.
Oh,
you're on mute.
I grew up in Minnesota as a Packer fan, so I understand the rivalry, like talking shit with NFC North rivals, because that was all my life was until I moved to ASU. It was me and my Viking fans friends just debating, Aaron Jones versus Dalvin Cook and just being really mean to each other about our respective football teams. But, we were still friends, So
yeah, that's what makes sports. So we love
that's what makes sports. So I don't really get too mad about Fields or love or any of it. It's just,
I think it's great. My best friend down here is a Packers fan. And then we have another friend who's a Lions fan. They're originally from Michigan. So we basically have like an NFC North, like, group. So we just like every day we're just sending like banner and shit to each other. But for his birthday this year, I got him a Jordan Love jersey because he had a Rodgers forever and he'd wear it to every game. I was like, no. Let's get it right. Now you only may be able to wear it for one season or two, but we gotta get you right. So I'm here for all this shit talking. I think it makes it great. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping it's a good rivalry. I'm hoping Love and Fields are two, the future for both of these franchises, honestly. Because I think people who hate on Love, I think it's all a bit weird for people who write him off so soon. And I'm honestly
we don't have enough information.
I wish I could write him off.
To pay. Yeah, right. I kind of hope he proves people who call him a running back wrong, because I think it's a little bit.
Yeah, I just want to compete, like you said. Let's make it an actual rivalry because it's been one-sided for a while. I don't know if you know that, Theo. I would like something a little bit more competitive. You know what I mean? Even if it's in our favor, just a tad, but like just something where I'm like excited to watch the game, like without this fear that like we're just gonna get our brakes stopped. So
yeah, it would be fun.
Absolutely.
It would be fun. Yeah. So it's all about having fun.
Well, Theo, man, we appreciate it. Again, give him a follow on his socials. We'll have to have you on again, man.
Yeah, of course. Always down to come back.
We got to get him.
Well, we want to thank Theo again for hopping on. I think it was a really fun conversation. You got to kind of see both sides, Packers, Bears view. But Vicky, man, what do you think?
I mean, I thought it was great. Theo did a great job kind of like giving out his viewpoints, talking about the good and bad of both, the Packers and where the Bears stand right now. So I think overall it was a great conversation.
Yeah, he's a great follow. You guys go ahead and check him out. We'll have his socials here in the description. But if you like the content, of course, make sure to subscribe, like, comment on the video. It really does help the channel grow.